Hey, what? Spitting is not nice. Don't. Please. Who taught you how to spit? Where did you learn that? Huh? Who taught you that? Hey. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Can you find 2 boats?
What are they?
You want what?
Yeah.
Oh. Can you find 2 rabbits? Mm-hmm. Where's the tree? Yeah. Can you see the leaves on the tree?
I am totally independent. I do what I please. I come and go. Poor Mike just comes and goes with me. But he's used to it. It doesn't bother him at all. We do a lot of things together. Go to the art museum or to the children's museum. We go for long walks. I don't have to, around the house, I don't really have to do anything that I don't want to do. People have asked me, why don't you get married? That's security. Have your old man support you, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm happy, just living the way I am. When you don't have any money, you all of a sudden discover that you've got friends. I'm happy if I have $5 left over. I think I'm rich. I've got everything I want. I've got a house. I've got a son. We both have our health. I've got good friends. I lead an active life in the community. I don't see what else you need. I have friends and lovers, too. You need them, I suppose. I was brought up in a Catholic home with the Catholic education. And my son's father is Catholic, too. And he and I sat down and talked about it. And we both decided that a child was a nice thing. After I was about 3 months pregnant, he decided that it wasn't. And I said, okay, I'm not going to fool around with you. This is too late. I'm not going to have an abortion. I don't want one. I'd rather have the child than you. Period. But I'm happy with him, and I just don't want that tie. I never think of him as being illegitimate. He's a little child, and he's very much loved. I want him to be a totally independent male. It's a radical idea. I want him to know how to cook. I want him to know how to clean his apartment or his house. I want him to know how to wash his clothes. I want him to know how to wash his dinner, his dinner dishes. I don't want him to be dependent on a woman. To me, it's an unreal thing to live with a man until the day you die. I think having a man would be too much of a luxury. I'd get lazy. I don't know what I'd do. I think it would be a drag. I really do. I'm involved in too many things. I'm gone all day. I'm doing things that I enjoy, things that I like to do, things that I don't want to give up right now to cater to a man's whims. That doesn't mean I don't like men and I don't respect them. I do very much. They're a very vital and a necessity. But not to me today, not this year, maybe next, or maybe the year after that. I haven't lived at home since I was 18. I've been a free spirit in San Francisco. And I came bebopping into my parents' house one day and I said, I'm pregnant and I'm living on welfare. The pregnancy kind of hit them, but the welfare, oh, my God, my father. A friend of mine, he's a manager of a sandwich shop, asked me if I wouldn't work for him for 3.5 hours a week. Little did I know that I was not working for myself, but I was working for the welfare department. I only worked 2 days last month, and I made $8 and some odd cents. I forgot. I totally and completely forgot to send in how much I had made plus my check receipts. And I got this threatening letter. If you do not report your earnings for last month, you will be cut off welfare. If you want to have a public hearing, it can be arranged, blah, blah, blah. That set me off. All that fucking mess for $8 and some odd cents. What? I'm going to make millions on $8 and some odd cents for the month of December. Jesus Christ. That got me. And as soon as my son is old enough, I'm going to go back to school. The minute I get my degree in my hot little hand, I'm going to just walk into the middle of the welfare department and say, "Fuck you for nothing. Nothing at all." I came into the daycare co-op about 2 months after it was started, and it was started by a bunch of people in the neighborhood and a few from Portland State. I go every Monday morning at 10 o'clock, and just about the first thing you have to do when you walk in is wipe some little child's nose. You wipe noses and feed them their lunch and kiss their owies and look at their paintings and play games with them, change their diapers. Take care of all the traumas that happen to them, and little tiny children must have a trauma minute. So you're constantly wiping up tears. But for every tear there's a smile too. It's worthwhile. Instead of having one child, you have 20. Their children have freedom to express themselves. Like if your child plays with his penis at home, we don't say, "Get your hands out of your pants, that's nasty, you're touching yourself." That's fine. If he wants to do it, good. As long as it doesn't become an obsession. Then we say, "Hey, something weird with your kid. Do you think you need a child psychologist or something?" But we believe in letting a child be curious and to answer his questions when they are curious and to let them explore. It's a unique daycare center, but it's something that could be done in every neighborhood in the United States, I think. There are so many empty rooms all over that are just waiting for children. A room full of screaming, running little children is a happy place. People in this neighborhood don't have anything except each other. It's a very much of a sharing type of existence. If you don't help each other, then you have nothing.
And so it's not just that we're women living together, but we're women living together who are going in the same direction, who want to do some things that are the same, and that makes a further tie.
I think it's more important to talk about why we don't want to live with men.
Yeah, we could probably.
No, I know, it's weird. I mean, it's not just everything that we get from women, but all the negative shit that we don't want to get from living with men. One of the things that's it, like we were joking before about washing the kitchen floors and all that, but when you live with women, you can fight over who gets to wash the kitchen floor.
Yeah,
but when you live with a man, it's your job, it's your role. It's not interplay between two people trying to fight out who's going to do this and who's going to do that, but just virtually by the fact that you're a woman, that's what's expected of you. It doesn't feel for me like it's this huge political or just political decision that I now choose to live with women. That living with women is one of the things that's more natural. I feel more me and more natural to live with women, and it's not just that I did decide, I think we all decided to change certain parts of our life, but it wasn't just that we woke up one morning and decided, I'm going to change my life and live with women. It's not just women, but particular friends that you feel good about living with. The last reason is wanting to raise children in a non-sexist environment, trying to raise children that grow up without their identity being in sex roles. And the best people that I found to do that with now is women, which isn't to say I don't want men in Liam's life, because there are men in Liam's life. But women are into that a lot more because they have much more at stake right now that men haven't realized how much they have at stake with that. But we don't want the kids growing up thinking that males do this and females do that. We want them to grow up to try to live up to the full potential they have as human beings. And one of the ways, the most important ways, is to not feel restricted, or whether it's physical capacity or being able to relate emotionally. And that's to raise them in an environment that tells them they're human beings and not, they know that they're boy and girl or boys and girls, but the importance of that is just not very important. like, well, this very heavy thing happened with an older man that had been taking care of the kids, and a lot of crap happened with penises and vaginas. But the thing that came out of that was Liam turned to me and said, Mel, is having a penis important? Why is it important? I just pee, it feels good. Why is a penis important? He couldn't understand why a penis was so important because it was just a part of his body. But if he hadn't been in the environment he was in, that would have been the very first start of teaching him that a penis is not part of your body, it's a power symbol. And that it's really important to have an area that he can come home with questions from the sexist crap he gets all over the place.
Yeah, a lot of times there's conflict over disciplining Liam. We were talking about patterns, and each of us has a different pattern, and so then we tend to sort of inflict that pattern on Liam, and those patterns aren't the same, and they just clash. And so one thing that we sort of decided to do is that whoever's staying with him would take responsibility for disciplining him, and that the other people would sort of stand back and let that person do what they're going to do, and then maybe talk about it later, not exactly in front of him, because it might freak him out to see us arguing about how he should act.
And Elspeth and Trina and I work a lot at the women's clinic, and lots a large part of our life. There's a real need for women's clinics, free women's clinics, that don't get met in the regular free clinics, because women have very real medical problems that don't usually get dealt with in a good way in those clinics. And the whole alienation from our bodies, women haven't been told anything about how their bodies work, and we want to demystify the whole process of medicine and also become a lot more in touch with our bodies. We do pregnancy tests and pregnancy counseling. We have lists of doctors and can help a woman get an abortion. And I teach trained childbirth for women that want to have the baby. And we do all the institutions, especially the government institutions in the city, keep referring women to the women's clinic for information and services that they should be providing them. And we want to try to get some money from them to pay for the pregnancy test that we're running on donation basis. I don't think the people that live together are a family. We've come to discover recently just how restricted it is thinking in terms of we're a family, even though it's breaking down the nuclear family. That there still is a restrictive feeling. It's not our living situation isn't as fly by night of we'll live together as long as we groove together, that kind of crap, and then leave. I guess we're more committed to trying to love each other and be there with each other for as long a time as that is constructive, or until things take us elsewhere. But it's not that, something else groovy is happening and we'll leave. It's something for people to talk about. In a lot of ways, breaking down the nuclear family isn't just, to me, creating, I forgot that word, an extended family. It's doing away with the family now. Because an extended family is still a family with ties. There's a good bond feeling that's established between friends, but if you're staying with people because you're loyal and you have to, because then people will be alone, it's still screwy. You got to break down the whole family and do away with the whole concept of family.
I had talked about it, about some kind of a communal living situation based on the pure logical economics of having lived in the suburbs and seen 84 little cracker boxes all alike with 84 power lawnmowers out on the same Saturday morning doing exactly the same thing, and simply thinking, if each guy cut his grass on a different day of the week, you wouldn't need 84 lawnmowers. Just on this basis, that the pure waste of living in single-family units is so gross.
Sheila and I talked this summer quite seriously in that we wanted to, and then we both talked to our husbands, and we did come back together. The four of us never got together, really, this summer to really talk about it. Then Sheila said, well, I think that Malcolm is ready, and I said, well, Dave thinks that he might like to try it, which was really, and then we did know of a house that we might be able to rent, but we came back and kind of got into our own routines and talked a little bit, but we certainly never got down and did any talking about how this would work or that would work, and we just found the house and said, okay.
I'm curious to know how the other people felt in going into it. I had a very easy feeling about my responsibility towards it, in the sense that in coming in, I had made no plans that it was going to last for a week or a month or a year or 10 years or anything else. I felt no pressure at all about making any decision or any commitment as far as a long-term relationship. And this makes me feel easy. I don't feel like I have to live up to any standards. I don't feel like if I moved out 3 weeks from now that I would have a sense of failure at all about it.
It's not like getting married.
No.
I think it was the same kind of a thing, that, there was some sort of intellectual commitment to the idea. The opportunity arose, and we said, okay, let's. It was economically feasible, and the opportunity was there, so we tried it. And I think it was a most fortuitous thing that it all came together like it did, and that I think it's been exceedingly good that it happened this way.
One thing that certainly struck me, I do a lot of puttering and fixing up and so forth and so on. And this house, of course, provides almost endless opportunity. I mean, if you want a dripping pipe, there's always one available. And sometimes the jobs are a lot of fun, but some of the things you run up again are really are tough to figure out, and they become real chores if you're all alone doing them. But one thing that happens here, particularly between Dave and I, is that we help each other in this sort of job, and it becomes really a pleasure to do them instead of a chore when you realize that you don't know what's the matter and you're going to have to think about it for a long while to figure out how to fix it. It can be fun under these circumstances because you have someone to share it with.
As I've mentioned before, I don't want roles clearly defined as far as women or men, and I do want my boys to help in the kitchen too. And I have never felt that I wanted Taffy, who is my girl, that her jobs were setting the table and helping with the cooking, and that these were the girl things to do and the boy things to do were the following Daddy around fixing the electricity or what have you.
Well, I initially imagined that there would be a major problem in the beginning amongst the kids. And I really expected that in these closed quarters that they would get themselves into a hassle and possibly involve the adults in the hassle too. I was surprised and pleased that they seemed able to handle the situation themselves. They both used a great deal of restraint. And they didn't hassle each other, and they didn't come to us with any problems.
One of the things that I see happening is a great many new relationships evolving. Some of the kind of things that we're talking about as being extending their relationship to other adults. And one of the things that Rosemary was talking about is that she is beginning to get to know the kids, and it's one of the ideas that I kind of had in the back of my mind as something that would, again, I was going to see how it happened, was how I related to these other children, rather than the sort of relationships I've had with my own, which have been rather autocratic. I would expect my relationship with these other children to be rather different. And hopefully something good might come out of my relationship with your children. That, perhaps I can give them some of the kind of thing that you're talking about, and that you wouldn't need to do as much of it. I used to get up in a house and by myself. I was the first one up. I went down, I got breakfast for myself. Well, I get up here and somebody's running some bath water and somebody's down knocking around in the kitchen, and I go downstairs and there's somebody there to say hello to. And it's just a different feeling than wandering around in an empty house. It's a much more pleasant place to get up in the morning, to come home to at night. I don't know. I hope this doesn't wear off.
One of the happiest times of a rather sad childhood, with a lot of sickness and death in my family and trained nurses there most of the time. A happy time was dinner with candles and a big table because we were a big family, and conversation. And this I look forward to. This is something I really enjoy that represents home to me, in capital letters, to gather around that table, to have candlelight, to have everybody there at one time, to make a point of having dinner together.
And whether we survive as a group is perhaps not terribly important, but it occurs to me, I wonder if the idea of communal living, in fact, isn't a great deal more valid for people our age, and even older, than it is for young people.
I don't know how it ever got started that we were living communally, except that I've always been inclined to be a mother to everybody. And so I collected a lot of people, like some people collect pets. It seemed like an easy way to live. Originally, I thought it would be really good for the children to be subjected to a lot of different kinds of people. And I also thought that they would get a lot more love that way.
And then Linda came up there primarily for economic reasons because she didn't have any money at that time. And she was being looked for by the police for being a runaway. So.
I was forced into a position because of economics to live communally. It just makes sense that you should live with a lot of other people. I think it really breaks down a lot of your subjectivity.
I sort of play the role of big sister to the kids.
My relationship with Brow is basically political.
Well, we both consider ourselves Marxist-Leninists.
Like whenever Brow and I ever talk or anything like that, it's usually on a philosophical level.
One reason that the three of us live together, I think, is because Brow is particularly combative of his sex role. He tends to do his share of everything.
Ever since we started living together, we've never been married legally. Pat brought up legal marriage. For some time prior to that, I had always thought that what matters most in terms of defining a person being married is the relationship that exists between those people, and not the piece of paper which is signed at the local government agency which says that according to the state you are now married.
Jack has always lived with other people. I've always been with him, but he's always been living with a lot of other people too. I guess he doesn't have any comparison because he's almost 3 now, but he hasn't ever lived in any kind of situation to make a comparison. Black Jack first met Brow when he was 1.
I only remember seeing him around every once in a while, never taking any interest in him, really, other than the fact that there was this little blonde baby walking around without any clothes on and never getting sunburned. And this was during the summer. I went to go see my brother's kids, and they're about, at that time they were 4 and 5, something like that. And that afternoon I just spent playing all afternoon with them outside in their backyard. And then I came back, and all of a sudden I just noticed I began to look at Blackjack in a different way. That in addition to being just a little baby who would walk around by himself, he just seemed like someone that I'd want to play with a lot and go through the same type of experience I went through with my nephews. Like this bond was established between us. And I just began to feel sort of like I was his caretaker, and I would be someone that he could rely upon. Anyone who treats him nicely, well, as far as he's concerned, that's just one more person in his circle of friends. He's just like an adult in the sense that he remembers what the experience was that he had with that person, and then builds from that. Since we've moved here, I don't keep as close an eye on him as I used to because there are more and more people who sort of look upon him as a little friend.
I was really straight when Jamie was a baby. And I read this article that said, you should let your children talk back to you because you might learn something about yourself. And that always made a lot of sense to me, because I always really had a lot of things I wanted to say to my mother, and my father too. Some of the best criticisms I've ever had about myself have come from the children. The children are pretty on the alert for adult chauvinism, because they've had it pointed out to them over quite a long period of time, and they really don't tolerate very much of it. They just don't have anything to do with adults who treat them that way. By and large, the people that they communicate with aren't that way at all.
As far as I'm concerned, I'd much rather be categorized as an adult chauvinist than I would to have my children's minds burned out by acid and have their lungs fried by smoking by the time they're 10 years old.
How can you tell someone's an adult chauvinist?
When they boss you around and tell you to do stuff that you don't want to, and they're always worried about you and stuff. They think you can't take care of your own self.
You can live without your parents, but you could live better if they wouldn't boss you around.
You want to bet I could live without my parents if I had about $1 million.
Like, they've heard a lot of political words used in a positive way, such as communism and anarchy and all these other things, which the average person on the street has always learned to be not only afraid of what it is, but also afraid of the very word, and that the very word conjures up all kinds of images of very evil, monster-y,
The
unknown, like, one step beyond, and that type of thing.
They're pretty much anarchists, all of them, because it's real convenient for them to be anarchists. It's, the less structure, the less demands on them. Basically, what we do is we coast along when we have enough money, and when we don't have enough anymore, then we get jobs. Like Linda had a job recently, Brow and I both had jobs, and like we both got a job so we could get a car. Yes, we work when we have to, and then when we don't, we don't. Then when we have to, we do it again.
But the thing is, it's really hard to point out the alternatives when there are no functioning alternatives in the system. That all there is that one thing. And especially like even Blackjack already knows what money is. He knows that if he has money, he can get certain things. So he's got a drive for money, really. And so already he's got capitalistic values instilled in him. Or let's say they grew up to be capitalists or something like that. I would say I had failed somewhere along the line to have them see that there is something even better. There's just no two ways about it. It's two completely different worlds.
I began to look at violence as a collective thing, like I still wouldn't hurt anybody in any kind of situation except like self-protection. But it's like I just came to realize that it would probably be necessary to use violence to change the social system.
Like the people who were in the revolutionary movement held up a mirror of reflection of the United States. I think that's one of the things that was our downfall. I don't think there was one goal that that we ever worked for that was ever attained, which is really a sad thing. And like a lot of people are just really getting discouraged. And so, like through indictments, people being put in jail, being burned out, and all these just really heavy pressures and problems that we're having, people are once again returning back to the thing that they were into before. It was sort of like they were victims of a cog in a wheel. So that's what I see is happening now. In the future, I think that communal thing is pretty much over with. I think the so-called revolutionary movement, for now, is over with. But I think that revolution in this country is inevitable.
We've been looking at 4 different experiments, living experiments, in which young people and one group of not so young people, slightly older people, have been living out attempts to vary the kind of lifestyle that we have in this country embodying in their attempts criticisms of our present lifestyle and aspirations towards different sorts of things. Now, all of this is very old. Ever since we've had civilization, we've had groups of people who've objected to the form of the family, who've objected to forms of life, who've objected to materialism and gone out in the desert to pray, or who've objected too much to too many people praying and have come out of the convents again to live in society. This is old, and it's also very important, because without experimental groups continually criticizing central tendencies, civilization couldn't advance. But there's something new here also, something new that we're seeing in these groups, because they're dealing with a new world situation. They're not only dealing with the fact that all institutions are imperfect, they're not only dealing with the fact that in a country as heterogeneous as the United States, we have a great tendency to impose one style on everyone, and it's very important to present alternatives. But they're dealing with a series of new situations. They're dealing with what's happened to the family in the last 25 years in the United States, as we've fragmented the whole country into suburbs on the one hand that are themselves segregated by age and race and religion and social class, and we've pushed other people into ghettos as a byproduct of the way we've built the suburbs, so that we've fragmented the whole country, separated people from each other, separated family members from other family members, and created a very unstable, unviable, isolated family. And this is new. This isn't the old American family where people lived in neighborhoods and many relatives lived nearby. This is a new thing created by the kind of building that we had after World War II and the kind of transportation. But they're dealing with something even more important than that. They're dealing with the fact that in the present-day world, we have faced the fact that we have too many people here at once, that we'd be much better off to be growing more slowly, to postpone inviting many of the children that are being born to another period when we could take better care of them, that half the world is starving because of the very rapid population growth, and that therefore we do not want to bring every man up with his principal occupation being a husband and father, and every woman up with her principal occupation being a wife and mother. We want people to be individuals and be able to contribute as individuals. We want to turn parenthood into a vocation so that those who are most suited to be parents will be able to give their children a better chance with the help of all the people who aren't parents. And we're facing the environmental crisis. We're facing the fact that we've developed a lifestyle that cannot possibly be pursued. We can't use as much power as we're using. We can't manufacture as many things that are continually thrown away. We can't insist in this country on a lifestyle that we simply cannot give to the rest of the world, because the rest of the world sees it and wants it too. So we have a problem of designing forms of life where people can live closer together, where children can walk, where we don't use up so much power and produce so much pollution, where we have a much more cooperative form of life where people share resources and share space and don't put such a tremendous burden on this planet. And as the United States has been the country that developed the over-capitalized individual home, our problem is to develop a new lifestyle, and criticisms like this of young people who are willing to try extreme experiments as a way of criticizing the narrowness, the fragmentation, the overemphasis on material things, and the social injustices that result. Criticisms like this are exceedingly valuable because they give us a chance to reevaluate what we're doing and design forms of living which will permit people to live closer together, many generations, different kinds of people, sharing much more than they share now, and all contributing to the safety of the young families with children who at present are left so isolated and alone.